Montana Territory, 1878. The harsh winter winds howled across the open plains, carrying the scent of snow and pine through the small town of Willowcreek. Emma Collins stood on the wooden boardwalk, clutching her shawl tightly around her petite frame as she stared at the weathered sign of the general store. At 21 years old, she had already faced more rejection and dismissal than most people twice her age. Her honey-blonde hair whipped around her face as she hesitated, her blue calico dress offering little protection against the bitter cold. "No one will take you seriously," her father's words echoed in her mind. "A woman your size has no business trying to manage affairs out here. The West will eat you alive." Standing barely 5 feet tall, Emma had spent her life being underestimated. Too small, too fragile, too delicate for the harsh realities of frontier life. That's what everyone said. After her parents' death from influenza 6 months ago, the family ranch back in Missouri had been sold to cover debts, leaving Emma with nothing but a letter from her mother's cousin in Montana offering her a position as a schoolteacher in Willowcreek. Emma believed the frontier was no place for someone like her. The West required strength and endurance, qualities she'd been told all her life she lacked. Yet here she stood, with nowhere else to go, clinging to the false hope that maybe, just maybe, she could prove her worth in this unforgiving land. "Miss, you planning on coming inside or just letting all my heat escape?" The gruff voice broke through her thoughts as the store owner held the door open, eyebrow raised. "I apologize," Emma said, ducking inside the warm interior. "I need supplies for my journey to the Collins homestead." The storekeeper's expression changed. "You're Harriet Collins' niece, the new schoolteacher." "Her cousin's daughter, yes." Emma straightened her shoulders, trying to appear more substantial than her frame allowed. "HMPH." Expected someone. His eyes traveled over her small stature, more suited to frontier life. Emma forced a smile, the familiar sting of dismissal settling in her chest. "I assure you, sir, I am quite capable." The bell above the door jingled, and a gust of cold air announced another customer. Emma turned to see a young man ducking to enter through the doorframe. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders filling out his worn leather coat. His face was youthful but weathered by sun and wind, with a light stubble across his strong jaw. Despite the harshness of the elements outside, there was a warmth in his hazel eyes that seemed to contradict the frontier's ruthlessness. "Afternoon, Yates," the storekeeper called out. "Mr. Johnson." The young man nodded respectfully, stomping snow from his boots. "Got my order ready." "Just about. This here's Miss Collins, come to take over teaching at the schoolhouse." The tall stranger turned his full attention to Emma, and she fought the urge to shrink beneath his gaze. She'd grown accustomed to the look of doubt that crossed people's faces when they met her. "Yates Hammond," he introduced himself, removing his hat to reveal thick, dark hair. "My ranch is about 3 miles from the schoolhouse." "Welcome to Willowcreek, Miss Collins." "Thank you, Mr. Hammond." Emma accepted his outstretched hand, surprised by the gentleness of his grip despite his calloused palm. "You have transportation out to your cousin's place?" he asked. Emma's confidence faltered. "I was told someone would meet the stage, but—" "Stage came early on account of the weather," Mr. Johnson interjected. "Ezra probably figured you weren't on it." "I see." Emma tried to mask her disappointment. Another obstacle, another reminder that she didn't belong. "I can take you," Yates offered without hesitation. "I'm headed that way anyhow." "I wouldn't want to impose." "No imposition," he said with an easy smile that reached his eyes. "But we should get moving, storm's coming and fast." Within the hour, Emma found herself seated beside Yates Hammond in his wagon, her modest belongings secured in the back. The horses pushed forward through the increasingly heavy snowfall, their breath creating plumes in the freezing air. "Been teaching long?" Yates asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "This will be my first formal position," Emma admitted, clutching her muff tightly, "though I've assisted at schools back east." Yates nodded. "Folks here are desperate for education. Closest school before was in Helena." "And you, Mr. Hammond, you're quite young to be running a ranch," Emma observed, estimating he couldn't be more than 25 or 26. A shadow crossed his features. 24. Took over after my father passed 2 years ago. Wasn't planning on it, but the frontier doesn't much care for plans. There was something in his tone that resonated with Emma, a familiar note of having life's path chosen by circumstance rather than desire. I understand that sentiment all too well, she said softly. The wagon hit a particularly deep rut, jolting Emma forward. Yates' arm shot out instinctively, preventing her from falling. His touch was brief but steadying, and Emma felt an unexpected warmth rise to her cheeks despite the biting cold. Careful, he cautioned. These roads can be treacherous. Like everything else out here, I imagine, Emma said, unable to keep the apprehension from her voice. Yates glanced at her, his gaze assessing but not unkind. The frontier demands respect, Miss Collins, but it rewards those who persevere. Size and strength aren't always measured in inches and pounds. The words hung between them as the wagon continued its slow progress through the deepening snow. Emma wondered if he truly believed what he said, or was merely being kind to a clearly out-of-place newcomer. The storm intensified as they traveled, visibility diminishing with each passing mile. Emma's anxiety grew as the wind howled around them, driving icy particles against her face despite the protection of her bonnet. "We're not going to make it to your cousin's place," Yates announced, his voice raised against the wind's roar. "My ranch is closer. We'll shelter there until the storm passes." Emma's heart raced at the impropriety of the suggestion, but one look at the blinding whiteness surrounding them silenced any protest. This was survival, not social convention. "I appreciate your hospitality, Mr. Hammond," she managed through chattering teeth. By the time they reached the Hammond ranch, Emma was nearly frozen despite the heavy blanket Yates had wrapped around her shoulders. The ranch house loomed like a sanctuary through the swirling snow, a substantial two-story structure with light glowing from within. "Martha," Yates called as he helped Emma down from the wagon. "We have a guest." An older woman with silver-streaked hair appeared at the door, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern as she took in Emma's condition. "Gracious, child, you're half frozen." Come in," Martha ushered Emma toward the roaring fire in the main room while Yates took care of the horses. "I'm Martha Wilson, the housekeeper," she explained, helping Emma remove her wet outer garments. "Been with the Hammond family since Yates was knee-high to a grasshopper." "Emma Collins," she managed through still chattering teeth, "the new schoolteacher." Martha's eyes widened slightly as she took in Emma's small stature, but unlike others, her expression quickly softened. "Teaching takes heart and mind, not brawn. You'll do just fine." When Yates returned, stomping snow from his boots, Martha had Emma wrapped in a quilt before the fire, a cup of hot tea warming her hands. "Storm's getting worse," he reported, hanging his coat by the door. "Might be a day or two before the roads are passable again." Emma's eyes widened. "I couldn't possibly impose for so long." "Nonsense," Martha interjected. "We've plenty of room, and it's not like we can toss you back into a blizzard." "Martha's right," Yates said, accepting a cup of coffee from the housekeeper. "Besides, it'll give you a chance to learn more about the families whose children you'll be teaching. Many of them work for me or trade with the ranch." As the evening progressed, Emma found herself oddly at ease in the Hammond home. Over a hearty supper of venison stew and fresh bread, Yates spoke of the community, the challenges of ranching in Montana Territory, and the families whose children would soon be her pupils. "Most of them are good folk," he explained, "just trying to carve out a life here. Education wasn't always a priority when survival took precedence, but things are changing." "And what of you, Mr. Hammond?" Emma asked. "What drove you to settle in such a challenging place?" A complexity passed across his features. "Wasn't my choice initially. My father brought us here when I was 12, convinced there was opportunity in this untamed land." He paused, swirling the coffee in his cup. "After he died, I could have sold up, gone back east, but something about this place gets in your blood." "The freedom," Martha added knowingly. "That's what keeps folks here despite the hardships." "Freedom," Yates echoed, his gaze meeting Emma's across the table. "The chance to be judged by your actions, not your circumstances. Emma felt something shift inside her, a recognition that perhaps this man understood more than she'd given him credit for. A noble sentiment, she said quietly, though not always the reality. No, he agreed, his eyes never leaving hers, but more possible here than many other places. That night, lying in the guest bedroom Martha had prepared, Emma listened to the howling storm outside. The frontier was every bit as dangerous as she'd feared, yet in the warm sanctuary of the Hammond home, she felt the first stirrings of possibility. Perhaps there was room here for someone like her after all. The blizzard raged for 2 days, forcing Emma to remain at the Hammond ranch longer than propriety dictated. Yet with each passing hour, she found herself less concerned with appearances and more drawn to the rhythm of frontier life. Yates showed her the ranch operations that could continue despite the weather, the care of livestock in the barn, the maintenance of equipment, the detailed ledgers that tracked every aspect of the business. "You seem surprised," he commented, noticing her interest in the accounting books. "I admit I expected ranching to be more." She searched for the right word. "Brawn over brains," he suggested with a smile. Emma blushed. "Something like that." "Takes both out here," Yates said, running a hand through his dark hair. "Strong back for the physical work, sharp mind for the business side. My father built this place with muscle, but nearly lost it by neglecting the numbers." On the afternoon of the 3rd day, as they worked together to repair tack in the relative warmth of the barn, Emma found herself sharing the story of her parents' deaths and the loss of her family home. "They never believed I could manage on my own," she confessed, her fingers working the leather with surprising dexterity. Perhaps they were right. Yates paused in his work, studying her with an intensity that made her heart flutter. "Why do you say that?" Emma gestured to herself with a self-deprecating smile. "Look at me, Mr. Hammond. I'm hardly built for frontier life." "And what exactly is the right build for frontier life, Miss Collins?" he challenged, setting aside the bridle he was repairing. "The West has chewed up and spit out men twice my size who couldn't adapt. It's not about how big you are, it's about how much you want to survive to thrive." His words hung in the air between them, carrying more weight than their brief acquaintance should allow. For the first time since arriving in Montana territory, Emma felt seen for who she was rather than dismissed for what she appeared to be. "Perhaps," she said softly, returning to her work. "No perhaps about it," Yates insisted. "You crossed half a continent alone to start a new life. That takes more courage than most men I know possess." Their eyes met and something electric passed between them, a recognition, a possibility neither dared name. The moment was broken by Martha's voice calling from the house, announcing that the storm had finally passed and the roads would soon be clear enough for travel. The journey to Harriet Collins' homestead the following morning was conducted in comfortable silence, the shared days having formed an unexpected bond between them. Emma's cousin received her with open arms, exclaiming over the ordeal of the blizzard and expressing profuse gratitude to Yates for her safe delivery. "You're always welcome at our table, Mr. Hammond," Harriet said warmly. "Emma may not remember, but your father and her father were acquainted years ago, before we all scattered to the winds." This revelation surprised both Emma and Yates, creating yet another thread connecting them. As Yates prepared to leave, he hesitated by his wagon. "The school term begins next week," he said. "I'd be happy to help you prepare the schoolhouse. It's been closed for some time." "That's very kind," Emma replied, suddenly reluctant to see him go. "Not kindness," he corrected. "Community. That's how we survive out here together." With a tip of his hat, he was gone, leaving Emma to wonder at the strange twist of fate that had brought her to this place, to this man who seemed to see strength where others saw only limitation. The following week proved challenging as Emma prepared both herself and the abandoned schoolhouse for the coming term. The small building had fallen into disrepair, windows cracked, floor warped from moisture, chimney partially collapsed. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, Yates appeared with a wagon full of supplies and 3 ranch hands in tow. "Heard you might need some assistance," he said simply. For 3 days they worked together to restore the schoolhouse. Emma was surprised to discover that despite her size, she could contribute meaningfully, cleaning, organizing, even helping to rehang the repaired door while standing on a sturdy crate. Yates never once suggested she couldn't or shouldn't participate in even the most demanding tasks, instead finding ways to make her efforts effective. On the final evening, as they stood admiring their handiwork in the fading light, Yates turned to her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "I'd be honored if you'd attend church with me on Sunday," he said, his usual confidence giving way to something more vulnerable. "Afterward, there's usually a community dinner. Would be a good chance for you to meet the families before school starts." Emma's heart quickened. "I would like that very much." The Willowcreek church was a simple structure, but on Sunday morning it was filled with families from across the surrounding area. Emma felt dozens of curious eyes upon her as she entered beside Yates, aware of the whispers her presence generated. "Don't mind them," Yates murmured close to her ear. "New faces are rare enough to cause a stir, especially when they arrive with a confirmed bachelor." The service passed in a blur, but the community gathering afterward proved more daunting than Emma had anticipated. Parents assessed her with barely concealed skepticism, clearly wondering how this diminutive young woman would manage their boisterous offspring. "She's hardly bigger than my Jacob, and he's only 10, she overheard one mother whisper to another. "Heard she nearly froze to death in that blizzard," another replied. "Won't last the winter, mark my words." Emma's confidence wavered as she struggled to maintain her composure amid the doubtful glances and whispered comments. Just as she contemplated making an excuse to leave early, she felt Yates' steady presence beside her. "Folks," he addressed the gathered families, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "I want to say something about our new teacher." The conversations died down as attention shifted to the young rancher, who, despite his youth, commanded respect throughout the community. "Some of you are wondering if Miss Collins is suited for frontier life," he continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "During the blizzard, when we were stranded at my ranch, I watched her learn to manage livestock in whiteout conditions without a single complaint. When the schoolhouse needed repair, she worked alongside men twice her size, finding solutions where others saw only problems." He turned to Emma, his eyes reflecting a certainty she wished she could feel herself. "Miss Collins may not look like your idea of a frontier woman, but I'll tell you this. She has more determination and adaptability than most I've encountered. Your children will be fortunate to learn from someone who embodies the very qualities needed to thrive in this territory." A moment of silence followed his words before conversation gradually resumed, though now with a different tenor. Several parents approached Emma with genuine welcome, and children regarded her with newfound curiosity rather than dismissal. As they walked back toward Harriet's homestead that evening, Emma found herself overwhelmed by Yates' defense of her. "Thank you," she said softly. "No one has ever spoken for me that way before." Yates stopped walking, turning to face her in the golden light of the setting sun. "I didn't say anything that wasn't true, Emma." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the spring evening. "Still," she insisted, "you didn't have to challenge the entire community on my behalf." "Yes," he said seriously, "I did, because they need to see what I see when I look at you." "And what is that?" Emma asked, barely above a whisper. His gaze softened. "Someone who belongs here if she chooses to." The weeks that followed were filled with the challenging but rewarding work of teaching Willowcreek's children. Emma discovered that her small stature actually helped her connect with the youngest pupils, who found her less intimidating than a larger adult might have been. The older children tested her at first, but soon learned that her diminutive size belied a firm resolve and sharp intellect that commanded respect. Yates became a frequent visitor to the schoolhouse, sometimes bringing books for the small library they were building, other times simply stopping by to repair something or deliver firewood. Each visit left Emma more certain that her feelings for the young rancher extended far beyond gratitude or friendship. Spring bloomed across the Montana landscape, transforming the harsh winter terrain into rolling green pastures dotted with wildflowers. With the improved weather came increased activity at the ranch, limiting Yates' visits, though he never failed to attend church beside Emma each Sunday. It was during the May social that everything changed. The community had gathered for a potluck dinner and dance to celebrate the coming summer. Emma wore her best dress, a pale blue cotton with delicate embroidery at the collar, and had pinned her honey-blonde hair in a style more elaborate than her usual practical arrangement. "You look beautiful," Harriet commented as they arrived at the gathering. "I suspect a certain rancher will think so too." Emma blushed, searching the crowd for Yates but not immediately seeing him. She was soon swept up in conversations with parents and community members who, over the past months, had come to respect the petite but determined schoolteacher. The music began, and couples took to the makeshift dance floor in the center of the town hall. Emma watched from the sidelines, enjoying the display of community and connection. "May I have this dance, Miss Collins?" The familiar voice sent her heart racing before she even turned to see Yates standing beside her, hand extended. He looked handsome in his best shirt, hair neatly combed, eyes warm with an emotion she dared not name. "I would be delighted, Mr. Hammond," she replied, placing her small hand in his large one. As he led her onto the dance floor, Emma became acutely aware of the height difference between them. The top of her head barely reached his shoulder. For a moment old insecurities threatened to surface. "I fear we must look rather comical," she murmured as they began to move to the music. Yates' hand tightened slightly at her waist. "We look like a man and woman enjoying a dance together, Emma. Nothing more, nothing less." The simple statement, delivered with such conviction, silenced her doubts. They moved together with surprising grace, Yates adapting his steps to accommodate her shorter stride without making her feel inadequate. As the evening progressed, they shared several more dances, their conversation flowing easily from school matters to ranch business to more personal topics. During a break in the music, Yates suggested they step outside for some air. The spring night was mild, stars speckling the vast Montana sky in a display impossible to witness in more populated areas. They walked a short distance from the hall, the music and laughter creating a backdrop to their solitude. "I have something to ask you," Yates said after a comfortable silence. Emma's pulse quickened. "Yes." "The cattle drive to Cheyenne leaves next week. I'll be gone at least a month." He paused, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "Would you write to me while I'm away?" The request was innocent enough, but both recognized it for what it was, an acknowledgement of deeper feelings, a desire for connection beyond their casual encounters. "I would be happy to," Emma replied, unable to suppress her smile, "though I'm not certain where to send such correspondence." "I've arranged with the postmaster in Cheyenne," Yates explained, his confidence returning. "And I'll write first, so you'll know where to direct your letters." They stood together beneath the stars, not touching yet somehow more connected than any dance had allowed. Emma felt a sense of possibility expanding within her, not just for them as individuals, but for them together. The month of Yates' absence dragged despite Emma's busy schedule at the schoolhouse. True to his word, his first letter arrived 10 days after his departure, pages filled with descriptions of the trail, the cattle, the men who rode with him, and most precious of all, his thoughts of her. "The vastness of this country continues to humble me," he wrote. "Yet I find my mind returning not to the endless horizon, but to the schoolhouse where you've created such a sanctuary of learning. The children of Willowcreek are fortunate indeed to have found a teacher whose strength lies not in physical stature, but in the boundless capacity of her heart and mind." Emma read the letter countless times, carrying it with her throughout the day, responding with equal candor about her day's teaching, her growing attachment to the community, and her anticipation of his return. Their correspondence continued, each letter more personal than the last, until Emma found herself confessing fears and hopes she'd never shared with another soul. "I have spent my life being dismissed as too small, too fragile for any real challenge," she wrote. "Even my parents, who loved me dearly, believed the world held no place for someone of my stature except as an object of protection. It wasn't until I came to Willowcreek that I began to wonder if perhaps they were wrong, if perhaps I might find not just a place to exist, but a place to truly live. Yates' reply came swiftly. Your parents' desire to protect you came from love, but love sometimes blinds us to the true nature of those we cherish. You are neither fragile nor insufficient, Emma. You possess a strength that has nothing to do with physical size, and everything to do with the courage to face a world that underestimates you, and prove it wrong with every breath you take. By the time news reached Willowcreek that the cattle drive was returning, Emma had acknowledged to herself what her heart had known for months. She was in love with Yates Hammond. Whether he felt the same remained uncertain, though his letters suggested a depth of feeling that gave her hope. The schoolhouse was abuzz with excitement on the day the children spotted dust on the horizon, signaling the drover's approach. Emma dismissed class early, her own anticipation making it impossible to focus on arithmetic or geography. She stood on the schoolhouse steps, watching as riders appeared in the distance. Her heart sank slightly when Yates was not among the first men to enter town. Perhaps he had stayed behind with the cattle, or maybe. Miss Collins, one of her students, young Billy Turner, came running up the road. "Mr. Hammond asked me to give you this." He thrust a folded piece of paper into her hand before dashing off again. With trembling fingers, Emma unfolded the note. "Meet me at the place where we first truly saw each other." "YH." Emma knew immediately where he meant, the barn at his ranch, where during the blizzard they had worked side by side repairing tack, where he had first challenged her beliefs about her own capabilities. Harriet loaned Emma her gentle mare for the ride to the Hammond ranch, understanding without being told the significance of the summons. As she approached the familiar property, Emma saw no sign of the returning cattle drive, just the ranch house and barn standing peaceful in the late afternoon sun. She tied the mare to the hitching post outside the barn and hesitated, smoothing her skirts and tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the barn door. Yates stood in the center of the space, still in his trail clothes, hat in hand. The month on the cattle drive had darkened his skin and added leanness to his already athletic frame. His eyes, when they met hers, held a mixture of exhaustion and something else, something that made Emma's breath catch. "You came," he said simply. "Of course I did." Emma took a step toward him, suddenly shy despite the intimacy of their letters. "How was the drive?" "Long, hard." He closed the distance between them, made bearable only by your letters. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. "I missed you," she admitted. "I realized something out there on the trail," Yates said, his voice low and earnest. "Something I think I've known since that blizzard forced us together but was too afraid to acknowledge." "What's that?" Emma whispered, hardly daring to hope. "That I love you, Emma Collins." The words hung in the air between them, unadorned but powerful. "Not despite your size, not because of it, but simply because you are you, the most determined, intelligent, compassionate woman I've ever known." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. "I love you too," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. Yates reached out, gently taking her hands in his. "I know there will be people who don't understand, who will look at us and see only the differences in our physical stature. But they'll be wrong, just as everyone who's ever underestimated you has been wrong." "Yates," Emma began, but he continued, seeming determined to say everything in his heart. "Your size doesn't matter, Emma, not to me, not to what we could build together." His thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands. "What matters is that when I imagine my future, this ranch, a family, a life worth living, I can't see it without you in it." Emma felt as though her heart might burst from happiness. "I never thought I'd find someone who could see past my physical limitations to who I truly am." "You don't have limitations, Emma, you never did." Yates smiled, releasing one of her hands to gently touch her cheek. "You simply needed the space to discover your own strength." When he bent to kiss her, Emma rose onto her tiptoes to meet him halfway, a perfect metaphor for the relationship they had built, each adapting to bridge the distance between them. The news of their courtship spread quickly through Willowcreek. While most of the community had grown to respect Emma during her months as a teacher, there were still those who whispered about the odd pair they made. He's so tall and robust, she's so petite and delicate. Pay them no mind, Harriet advised when Emma confessed her awareness of the gossip. Those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter. Throughout the summer, Yates courted Emma with a gentlemanly devotion that silenced even the most persistent critics. He attended school functions, helped with community projects, and made it clear through both words and actions that he saw in Emma not a fragile doll to be protected, but an equal partner worthy of respect. Their differences in height occasionally presented practical challenges, but they faced each with good humor and creativity. When Emma struggled to mount her horse, Yates crafted special mounting blocks to place at the ranch and schoolhouse. When they danced, he developed a style that showcased her grace, rather than emphasizing their disparity. "It's not about overcoming differences," he explained to a particularly nosy church lady who commented on their courtship. "It's about recognizing that differences don't need to be overcome at all." As autumn approached, bringing with it the start of a new school term, Yates invited Emma to dinner at the ranch. Martha outdid herself preparing a feast, then mysteriously disappeared after serving the meal, leaving the couple alone in the dining room. "I have something to show you," Yates said when they'd finished eating. "Would you walk with me?" Hand in hand, they strolled in the direction of the creek that ran along the edge of the Hammond property. The setting sun bathed everything in golden light, lending a dreamlike quality to the moment. They crested a small rise and Emma gasped. Below them stood a newly constructed cabin, smoke curling invitingly from its chimney. "What is this?" she asked, turning questioning eyes to Yates. "A beginning," he answered, leading her down the path toward the structure. "If you want it." The cabin was small but beautifully crafted, with a covered porch facing the creek. Inside, Emma found a cozy living area with a stone fireplace, a kitchen with a cast-iron stove, and 2 bedrooms, one larger than the other. The second bedroom could be a study, Yates explained, watching her explore. "Or perhaps, someday, a nursery." Emma turned to him, her heart full. "You built this for us." "I built it for you," he corrected, taking her hands. "Whether or not it becomes ours depends entirely on your answer to a question I've been waiting to ask." Dropping to one knee before her, Yates looked up into Emma's eyes with an expression of such tender devotion that tears immediately sprang to her lashes. "Emma Collins, you came to Willowcreek believing yourself too small for this vast frontier. I think we've both discovered that perception couldn't be further from the truth." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a simple gold band. "I am asking you to be my wife, my partner in all things, the mother of my children and the keeper of my heart. Will you marry me?" Through her tears, Emma smiled. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." When he slipped the ring onto her finger, it fit perfectly, just like everything else between them, adapted to suit their unique bond. They married in the Willowcreek church as autumn painted the surrounding hills in russet and gold. Emma wore a cream-colored dress that Harriet and Martha had collaborated to create, designed to complement her petite frame without emphasizing it. Yates stood tall and proud beside her, his eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. "I promise to stand with you," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the packed church, "not over you or for you, but beside you in all things." "I promise to grow with you," Emma replied, "not in stature but in understanding, compassion, and love." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, Yates bending down while Emma stood on tiptoe, the congregation erupted in applause and cheers. Even those who had once whispered about their differences joined in celebration of a love that transcended physical appearance. The Hammond Ranch thrived under their joint stewardship. Emma continued teaching, finding that her dual role as teacher and rancher's wife earned her newfound respect throughout the territory. Yates expanded the ranch operations, his business acumen complemented by Emma's organizational skills and education. The little cabin by the creek became their sanctuary, a place where they were simply themselves, without the scrutiny of the outside world. It was there, during the winter following their marriage, that Emma shared the news that their family would soon grow by one. "Are you certain?" Yates asked, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "The doctor and Helena said pregnancy might be difficult for someone of your size." Emma placed his large hand on her still flat stomach. "The doctor in Helena doesn't know me like you do," she reminded him. "I'm stronger than I look, remember." Her pregnancy proved challenging but manageable. The community that had once doubted her ability to survive a Montana winter now rallied around her, offering support and assistance. Harriet moved temporarily into the ranch house to help, and Martha fussed over Emma's nutrition and rest with grandmotherly devotion. On a crisp spring morning in 1880, Emma gave birth to a healthy daughter they named Hope, a testament to the optimism that had guided their journey together. As Yates placed their newborn in Emma's arms, the contrast between the petite mother and the strong father framing the perfect infant between them created a tableau of family that defied conventional expectations. "She has your eyes," Emma whispered, tracing a finger along their daughter's delicate features. "And your courage," Yates replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Look how fiercely she holds on to life already." As the years passed, the Hammond family grew, first with the addition of a son, then another daughter. Each child inherited some combination of their parents' traits, Yates' height and Emma's determination, his strength and her intellect. They learned from both parents that true capability had nothing to do with physical size and everything to do with character and perseverance. The schoolhouse where Emma had once fought to prove herself eventually became too small for the growing community. When the time came to build a larger building, it was Yates who stood before the town council and proposed naming it the Collins Academy in honor of the woman who had shown Willowcreek that the measure of a person had nothing to do with inches or pounds. On the 10th anniversary of their marriage, Yates and Emma stood together on the porch of their home, no longer the small cabin by the creek, but a comfortable house built to accommodate their family of 5. Their children played in the yard as the sun set over the Montana landscape that had once seemed so intimidating to a petite woman from Missouri. "Do you ever regret it?" Yates asked, his arm around Emma's shoulders. "Coming to this untamed place, taking on its challenges, choosing this life with me." Emma leaned into his embrace, watching their children, the tallest already nearly her height, chase each other through the golden evening light. "Never," she said with absolute certainty. "This is where I discovered that I was never too small for the world. I just needed the right place and the right person to help me see my own magnitude." Yates pressed a kiss to the top of her head, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over their years together. "Your size doesn't matter, Emma," he said, echoing words spoken long ago in a barn during a blizzard. "It never did." "No," she agreed, rising onto her tiptoes to kiss him properly. "What matters is that we built this life together, not despite our differences, but because of them." As twilight descended on the Hammond ranch, Emma and Yates called their children in for supper. Their voices harmonizing across the years and distances they had traveled to find one another. A perfect testament to a love that had never been defined by physical stature, but by the immeasurable capacity of two hearts that recognized in each other exactly what they needed to become whole.